book-owners! If you've been with me for a while, you know how much I love tapping into creativity. Whether it's creating quirky skits or coming up with funky plant names, I thrive on fresh ideas. But let's be real. Coming up with original ideas can sometimes feel like you are waiting for inspiration to strike. And that doesn't always happen. That's why I'm happy to share that today's video is sponsored by Skillshare, the largest online learning community for creatives. Recently, I've just been trying to explore new ways to tap into my creative process and get more original ideas flowing, and I found the perfect class on Skillshare. The Creative Toolkit, 6 Techniques to Spark Original Ideas by Esteban Gast. Esteban, a teacher, author, comedian, breaks down the science of creativity and shares tangible tools to unlock your creative potential. One technique I found particularly helpful is juxtaposition, where you take 2 unrelated concepts like basketball and Western movies, and you brainstorm ways to combine them. And this forces your brain to think differently, leading to fresh and unexpected ideas. Another great technique is the lotus blossom, where you start with a central idea and you break it down into smaller components, exploring each one, which will generate even more creative insights. And these are just 2 of the many tools that Esteban teaches to help you consistently generate original ideas no matter your medium, whether it's writing or music, visual art, or even entrepreneurship. Skillshare offers thousands of classes across categories from writing to design to entrepreneurship, making it an incredible resource for leveling up your skills and unlocking your creative potential. And here's the best part. The first 500 people to use the link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today and turn your creative I want tos into I made it happens. Poison, the weapon of whispers and shadows. Throughout history, it's been the tool of choice for those who prefer their deeds to be quiet, their kills discreet, and their enemies dispatched without a trace. Unlike a sword or a dagger, poison leaves little evidence. It's the ultimate covert operation. No mess, no fuss, just a silent, sudden end, often right in the middle of a lavish banquet or a seemingly innocent sip of wine. It's no wonder poison has been a favorite among the power-hungry. It offers control, the ability to strike from a distance, and an element of surprise that a more direct method lacks. Today we are exploring some of the most notorious cases of assassinations and murders involving plant-based poisons. So grab your goblet and settle in. We're about to enter the shadowy world of political intrigue where the pen might be mightier than the sword, but the right plant can topple an empire. Our first story takes us back to ancient Greece, a world of philosophers, warriors, and political machinations. One of the most famous poisonings in history is that of the philosopher Socrates, who was sentenced to death by consuming a lethal dose of hemlock, a plant known for its toxic properties. But why was Socrates sentenced to such a fate? The answer lies in the complex political and social landscape of Athens in the 4th century BC. Socrates, a man devoted to questioning and debate, often challenged the status quo, encouraging his followers to think critically about the nature of justice, piety, and knowledge. His method of relentless questioning, what we now call the Socratic method, often made him unpopular among the powerful elites of Athens, who viewed him as a dangerous gadfly stirring up dissent. Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens and impiety, specifically for allegedly introducing new gods and failing to honor the traditional ones. His trial was as much a reflection of Athens' political tensions as it was about his philosophical views. Following a democratic vote by the Athenian jury, Socrates was found guilty. The method of execution? Drinking a cup of hemlock tea. It was a common form of capital punishment in Athens at the time. It was considered a relatively humane way to die, as it was meant to be less violent and more dignified than other forms of execution, such as stoning or crucifixion. I guess when it came to executions, the Athenians believed in keeping it classy. Hemlock, specifically Conium maculatum, contains several toxic compounds, the most potent of which is coniine. Coniine works by disrupting the central nervous system, leading to paralysis and eventually respiratory failure. Ingesting even a small amount of hemlock can be fatal. The plant's delicate white flowers and feather-like leaves give it a benign appearance, but it hides a deadly secret.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
A perfect metaphor for the kind of philosophical debates that Socrates himself might have been engaged in. As the story goes, Socrates was given a cup of hemlock tea, and in a moment that has been immortalized by countless artists and writers, he calmly drank it, surrounded by his friends and loyal followers. His death was a slow and painful process. As the poison took effect, Socrates' body became paralyzed. His breathing slowed, and he eventually succumbed to the toxic effects. His choice to drink the poison, rather than flee the city or recant his teachings, has been interpreted as a final act of defiance and a commitment to his principles. Or maybe he was just really committed to the bit, you know? Socrates' death is a stark reminder that even in a society that prides itself on reason and debate, power and politics can be just as deadly as any blade. And maybe, just maybe, they had a little trouble handling a guy who constantly asked, "But why?" for 70 freaking years. The use of hemlock in Socrates' execution is one of the earliest recorded instances of a plant-based poison being used for judicial purposes. However, as we move forward in history, we find that the application of these deadly plants became more insidious and politically motivated. In Renaissance Italy, for instance, poison wasn't just a tool of justice, but a weapon wielded in the ruthless pursuit of power. Enter the infamous Borgias that we touched on in part 1 of this series. In Renaissance Italy, political intrigue was as rich and textured as the frescoes adorning the Vatican. The Borgia family, under the leadership of Pope Alexander VI, became synonymous with corruption, scandal, and of course, strategic poisoning. But before we dive into the lethal legends surrounding Lucrezia Borgia, let's take a step back and peek at the colorful family tree that may have set the stage for such notorious behavior. Imagine a time when Rome wasn't just the seat of the Christian church, but also the hottest ticket in town for scandal and intrigue. The Borgia's predecessors, Marozia and her clan, practically wrote the book on how to rule with both an iron fist and a guilty conscience. Her family's power plays were filled with enough drama to make even the most over-the-top soap opera look like a polite tea party. Marozia, a formidable noblewoman, was known for her high political ambitions and equally low moral standards. She wasn't just content with a mere title. She wanted the whole chessboard. Kings, bishops, and all. If you think Thanksgiving dinners with your in-laws are awkward, imagine Marozia's family gatherings. She was the daughter of Count Theophylact of Tusculum and his notorious courtesan Theodora, who once was called the sole monarch of Rome, a title that sounds impressive until you realize it was probably sarcasm. Marozia herself became a patrician of Rome, queen of Italy, and both the mistress and the executioner of popes. Her family didn't just play politics, they weaponized it. And let's just say, when your grandmother's idea of a good time is strangling a pope in the Castel Sant'Angelo, your family dinners are bound to have some unique conversation starters. With such a colorful family history, it's no wonder Lucrezia Borgia found herself embroiled in a swirl of accusations, rumors, and outright fabrications. Her notorious reputation as a poisoner could be seen as less of a personal failing and more of a family tradition. After all, when your relatives treat the Vatican like a reality TV show and your family motto is probably something like, "Do unto others before they do unto you," it's hard to stay out of trouble. So, on to Lucrezia. She was rumored to possess a unique and deadly weapon, her infamous hollowed-out ring, which supposedly contained a hidden compartment for poison. This wasn't just any poison, babes. According to legend, it was Cantarella, a substance rumored to be a potent mix of arsenic and plant-based toxins. But what exactly was Cantarella, and why did it strike fear into the hearts of so many? Cantarella's reputation as a subtle and effective poison made it a perfect tool for political assassinations. Historical accounts suggest that it was derived from a combination of deadly nightshade belladonna, henbane, and potentially other toxic plants like monkshood. These plants are known for their potent alkaloids, which affect the nervous system, causing symptoms ranging from delirium and hallucinations to paralysis and death. Belladonna, for instance, contains atropine, which disrupts the parasympathetic nervous system, leading to potentially fatal arrhythmias. Henbane and monkshood similarly contain compounds that can cause severe neurological effects. To produce Cantarella, the Borgias would have needed a skilled apothecary, essentially a poison chef, who understood not only the toxic properties of these plants, but also how to blend them to create a poison that could be administered subtly. The beauty of Cantarella lay in its ability to mimic common ailments, making it almost impossible for the untrained eye to detect foul play. To the unsuspecting, a victim's death could be attributed to a sudden illness, a stroke of bad luck, or even divine retribution. Imagine attending a 15th century banquet, the music playing softly in the background, candlelight flickering on the walls, and Lucrezia, charming as ever, raising a glass of wine to her lips while silently sealing your fate. Cheers, and goodbye. It's the Renaissance version of musical chairs, except you want to be the last one standing. Another tale that has persisted through the ages is that of a deadly banquet hosted by the Borgias. According to legend, Lucrezia was present at a lavish dinner where several high-ranking officials were mysteriously poisoned. The details are murky, but the story suggests that Lucrezia, along with her brother Caesar and her father Pope Alexander VI, invited their political rivals under the guise of reconciliation. As the wine flowed and the evening progressed, one by one, the guests began to show signs of distress. Some accounts say that Lucrezia herself poured the wine, smiling sweetly as she watched her enemies unknowingly drink their doom. But what might have been in that wine? Let's consider the potential ingredients from a toxic botanical perspective. A blend of belladonna and monkshood could induce a range of symptoms, initially dizziness and confusion, followed by escalating symptoms like severe vomiting, convulsions, and eventually, you guessed it, death. Monkshood in particular is known for its fast-acting properties. Just a small dose can be fatal within a few hours. It's the kind of poison that, once administered, doesn't give its victim much time to figure out what's going wrong. In a setting like a banquet, where there's plenty of food and drink to mask the taste, Cantarella, or a similar concoction, would have been the perfect silent killer. In reality, okay, the story is likely more fiction than fact, a creation of the Borgia family's many enemies who sought to discredit them by any means necessary. However, the tale has endured, probably because it captures the imagination. An innocent-looking woman with a deadly secret, her beauty and charm a mask for her lethal intentions. It's the Renaissance version of a mystery dinner theater, except instead of solving a murder, you're trying to avoid becoming the next victim. Despite the enduring legends, many modern historians argue that Lucrezia Borgia's reputation as a poisoner was largely the product of a smear campaign. The Borgia family had no shortage of enemies, and the idea of a beautiful young woman wielding her poison as a weapon of choice made for a tantalizing and scandalous story. It's possible that Lucrezia was simply a pawn in her family's power plays, her name and image manipulated to suit their needs. On the other hand, the Borgias were known to use poison as a political tool, and it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility that Lucrezia was involved in some capacity. Whether as an active participant or an unwilling accomplice, her association with poison remains a compelling aspect of her legacy. After all, in a family that made enemies as quickly as the Borgias, knowing a few tricks about toxicology might have been considered a necessary life skill, like knowing how to embroider or do a perfect curtsy, but with lethal finesse. Lucrezia Borgia's story, whether fact or fiction, reflects the dark and often dangerous world of Renaissance politics. The rumors of her use of poison, like those surrounding her brother Caesar and Father Pope Alexander, have made her a figure of intrigue and fascination. As we leave Italy, we cross the Alps into France, where another woman, Catherine de Medici, would take up the mantle of political intrigue and poison, weaving her own legacy in the deadly dance of power. Catherine de Medici, the Italian-born Queen of France, is a figure shrouded in mystery, intrigue, and a fair amount of scandal. Her reputation as a poisoner might be as exaggerated as the stories themselves, but that doesn't mean we can't have a bit of fun with it. Catherine, known for her roles in the wars of religion and her patronage of the arts, was also rumored to have an extensive knowledge of poisons and their uses, a skill she allegedly employed to maintain her grip on power in the tumultuous court of France. One of the most enduring stories involving Catherine de Medici is the alleged poisoning of Jeanne d'Albret, Queen of Navarre. Jeanne was a formidable woman in her own right, known for her strong-willed personality and her role in the French Wars of Religion. She was a staunch Protestant, which put her at odds with the Catholic Catherine, who was determined to unite France under one faith, preferably her own. Catherine had grand plans for her daughter, Marguerite de Valois, and part of those plans involved marrying her to Jeanne's son, Henry of Navarre. This marriage would not only cement an alliance, but also, Catherine hoped, bring an end to the religious conflicts tearing France apart. However, Jeanne was not so easily persuaded. She resisted the match, suspicious of Catherine's intentions, and perhaps rightfully so. According to legend, Catherine sent Jeanne a beautiful pair of gloves. A thoughtful gift is always the perfect way to say, let's be friends, and certainly couldn't be interpreted as a slap in the face.
I've had all I can stomach from you.
Of course, these weren't just any gloves. They were allegedly laced with a toxic concoction derived from monkshood and other poisonous plants. Come on! Jeanne reportedly fell ill shortly after receiving the gift and died under mysterious circumstances, fueling rumors that Catherine had orchestrated her demise with a well-placed dose of poison. Now, whether Jeanne's death was indeed caused by poison is a matter of historical debate. Some argue she died of natural causes, while others claim Catherine's involvement is a fabrication of her enemies. But let's face it, if you're known for keeping a cabinet of poisons, people are gonna start connecting the dots in some interesting ways. Picture Catherine saying, "Oh, these gloves? Just something special I had made. You can't find another pair like them." And you wouldn't want to. Another story that adds to Catherine's reputation as a poisoner is her supposed experimentation with various toxic substances. According to some accounts, she conducted secret experiments, testing her poisons on condemned prisoners to perfect her methods. She allegedly worked closely with a team of apothecaries who prepared her deadly brews and advised her on their use. This was Renaissance France, after all, a time when alchemy, mysticism, and a general disregard for human life often went hand in hand. Catherine's supposed favorite potions were derived from plants like monkshood, belladonna, and henbane. Each of these plants contains powerful alkaloids capable of causing a range of symptoms, from hallucinations and delirium to paralysis and death. Monkshood, for example, could cause severe pain, vomiting, and asphyxiation. Belladonna, with its dangerously attractive berries, could lead to dilated pupils, rapid heartbeat, and ultimately, death. Henbane, meanwhile, was notorious for its mind-altering effects, making it a favorite for those who wanted to drive their enemies mad, literally. Whether Catherine actually conducted these experiments or not is still up for debate. Some historians argue that these stories were merely a result of a smear campaign by her enemies, who wanted to paint her as a diabolical figure. After all, a powerful woman in a male-dominated society was bound to attract some colorful rumors. As Catherine might have said, if they're gonna talk about me, might as well give them something to talk about. Catherine's court was also famous for its flying squadron, in French escadron volant, a group of beautiful young women who were said to serve as spies and, if necessary, poisoners. These women were rumored to use their beauty to seduce and manipulate political figures, gathering information or delivering a well-placed dose of poison when needed. It's like a Renaissance version of Charlie's Angels, but with more powdered wigs and fewer moral qualms. While much of this is likely exaggerated or fabricated, the idea of a cadre of femme fatales roaming the French court, armed with both charm and poison, really adds to the mystique surrounding Catherine. Whether these women actually poisoned anyone or were simply a figment of Catherine's enemies' imaginations, their story reflects the fear and fascination that poison has always inspired. While much of Catherine de Medici's reputation may be more myth than reality, the tales of her alleged poisonings have cemented her place in history as a master of intrigue. From the poisoned gloves to the rumored experiments, Catherine's story is a reminder that in politics, appearances can be deceiving, and sometimes a seemingly innocent gesture can be far more dangerous than it appears.
Ah, you fool! You fell victim to one of the classic blunders!
As we leave the French court, let's turn our attention to another modern example of political intrigue where a different kind of poison played a very deadly role. One of the most notorious modern cases of political assassination involving a plant-derived toxin is the murder of Georgi Markov, a Bulgarian dissident, in 1978. This event, often referred to as the Umbrella Murder, took place during the height of the Cold War, and it remains one of the most chilling examples of covert assassination. Georgi Markov was a Bulgarian writer and journalist who defected to the West and became a vocal critic of Bulgaria's communist regime. He worked for the BBC World Service, Radio Free Europe, and Deutsche Welle, where he frequently criticized the Bulgarian government. His outspoken stance made him a target for the Bulgarian Secret Service, which allegedly collaborated with the KGB to silence him. On a seemingly ordinary day in September 1978, while waiting at a bus stop on London's Waterloo Bridge, Markov felt a sudden sharp sting in the back of his right thigh. He turned around to see a man with an umbrella hurriedly walking away. At first, Markov thought it was just a strange accident. Maybe an inadvertent jab with an umbrella tip, okay. However, as the day progressed, he began to feel increasingly unwell. Within hours of the incident, Markov's condition began to deteriorate rapidly. He developed a high fever, accompanied by severe nausea and vomiting. His symptoms soon escalated to intense abdominal pain, diarrhea, and weakness. It became evident that something far more sinister than a minor accident was at play. By the time he was admitted to St. James's Hospital in Belham, his condition was critical. Doctors initially struggled to diagnose the cause of Markov's rapidly worsening health. The symptoms suggested severe systemic poisoning, but the exact toxin remained a mystery. As Markov's condition declined, he experienced difficulty breathing and his blood pressure dropped dangerously low, a classic indication of multi-organ failure. Over the next few days, Markov's health continued to spiral downward. His kidneys began to fail, followed by his liver, and finally, his heart. Despite the best efforts of his medical team, his body was shutting down, one organ at a time. On the fourth day after the attack, Georgi Markov succumbed to the mysterious illness, his death shrouded in intrigue and suspicion. An autopsy revealed a tiny metal pellet embedded in Markov's thigh. Upon closer examination, the pellet was found to be the size of a pinhead and contained 2 small holes. This discovery led to the chilling realization that the pellet was specially engineered to contain ricin, a highly potent toxin derived from the castor bean plant. Ricin works by inhibiting protein synthesis within cells, which is essential for cell survival. Once inside the body, even a minuscule amount of ricin can cause cell death, leading to widespread tissue damage and organ failure. The slow dissolution of the ricin pellet in Markov's bloodstream ensured a gradual release of the toxin, allowing it to spread throughout his body undetected until it was too late. This method of delivery was not only ingenious, but also incredibly insidious. It ensured that Markov's death would appear to be from natural causes, at least initially. Markov's assassination was a stark reminder of the lengths to which governments would go to eliminate dissent and maintain control during the Cold War era. The use of ricin, a plant-based toxin, added a layer of intrigue to the murder, demonstrating that even in modern times, ancient poisons could still find their place in political warfare. Despite an extensive investigation, the identity of Markov's assassin remains unknown, and the case has never been conclusively solved. The umbrella murder continues to captivate imaginations, a blend of Cold War espionage, covert assassination techniques, and the deadly properties of one of nature's most toxic plants. A true modern mystery. From Markov's death on a cold London street, we now turn to a more recent case, where poison once again found its place in the hands of a scorned lover. While the Cold War era showed us the intricacies of state-sponsored assassination, our next story is a chilling reminder that the deadly art of poisoning can strike much closer to home, inside the confines of domestic life. The case of Lakhvinder Cheema serves as a hauntingly modern example of how the ancient knowledge of plant-based toxins still lingers in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. In 2009, a quiet London suburb became the scene of a chilling modern-day poisoning that would go down as one of the most notorious uses of aconite in recent history. This was not a tale from an ancient court of intrigue, but a contemporary tragedy rooted in jealousy, heartbreak, and betrayal. At the heart of this story was Lakhvinder Lucky Cheema, a 39-year-old man who was just weeks away from marrying his fiancée Georgi, but his life was cut short in a calculated act of murder, orchestrated by his ex-lover Lakhvinder Singh. The deadly agent used to execute this act? Aconitum ferox, also known as Indian aconite or the Queen of Poisons. Aconite, often referred to as monkshood or wolfsbane, has a long and dark history as a poison. Warriors in ancient times used it to tip their arrows, ensuring swift death for their enemies. The toxic alkaloids found in the plant, particularly aconitine, disrupt the nervous system and the heart, leading to symptoms such as vomiting, paralysis, and cardiac arrest. Even a small amount can be fatal, and in Cheema's case, the dose laced into his meal was more than enough to guarantee his death. On the night of January 27, 2009, Singh carefully planned an act of vengeance for what she saw as Cheema's betrayal of her love. While Cheema and his fiancée were unaware, she entered Cheema's home and laced a leftover curry in the fridge with aconite, knowing that they were planning to eat it that evening. The poison concealed in the food was undetectable to the couple as they sat down for an ordinary meal. It didn't take long for the poison to take effect. Within hours, both Cheema and Gurjit began experiencing severe vomiting, stomach pain, and numbness. As their conditions rapidly deteriorated, Cheema's face went numb and he lost his vision and the use of his limbs. Desperate, Cheema dialed 999 and told the operator, "Someone put poison in our food. It's my ex-girlfriend." His final words were filled with a mix of disbelief and horror as he struggled to stay conscious. He was rushed to the hospital but died within an hour of arriving. His fiancée, who had consumed a smaller portion of the tainted curry, was placed into a medically induced coma and narrowly survived the attack. Her recovery took days, and only after intensive medical intervention was the poison identified as aconite. The deadly nature of aconite lies in its ability to mimic food poisoning or a sudden illness. Victims typically experience nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain, symptoms that easily disguise the lethal poison until it's too late. As the poison progresses, victims lose feeling in their limbs, experience extreme dizziness, and suffer from heart arrhythmias. Ultimately, death comes from cardiac arrest. The choice of aconite as a murder weapon in this case was no accident. Its stealth made it the ideal tool for someone like Singh, who wanted to conceal her crime as long as possible, allowing her victim to unknowingly ingest a fatal dose without immediate detection. Police quickly pieced together the events leading to Cheema's death. Singh's behavior after the poisoning raised suspicions, and a lodger had seen her tamper with the curry earlier that day. officers found traces of aconite powder in her coat pocket and among herbs in her home, linking her directly to the murder. During the trial, evidence was presented showing that Singh, unable to cope with Cheema's engagement, had planned the poisoning meticulously. Her jealousy, rage, and desire for revenge had driven her to poison the man she had been in a relationship with for 16 years. The case sent shockwaves through the media, not only because of the brutality of the crime, but also due to the rarity of aconite poisonings in modern times. The jury found Singh guilty of murder, and she was sentenced to life imprisonment. Lakhvinder Cheema's murder serves as a grim reminder that ancient poisons like aconite are still deadly weapons even in the modern age. Although rare, aconite poisonings still occur, demonstrating that the knowledge of toxic plants continues to pose a threat today, just as it did centuries ago. Throughout history, poison has been the tool of choice for those who wish to maintain a veneer of civility while dispatching their foes. From Socrates' fatal cup of hemlock to the cunning concoctions of the Borgias and the mysterious deaths orchestrated by Catherine de Medici, poisonous plants have left a dark mark on political history. They have turned the dinner table into a battlefield, making every meal a potentially lethal encounter. Poison continues to fascinate us, even today. There's a certain allure in the idea that something so small, so unassuming, could bring down the mightiest figures. It's not just about the stealth or the secrecy, it's about the drama, the intrigue of a crime that leaves no blood, no fingerprints, and often no trace. In my next video, we'll explore how these deadly plants have left their mark on culture and folklore, shaping stories and legends that still haunt us today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the murky world of poison assassinations, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to dive deeper into fascinating topics like this, join my Patreon community at patreon.com/BetsyBegonia. As a member, you unlock exclusive bonus content, behind-the-scenes insights, and get the chance to shape my upcoming videos through interactive polls and questionnaires. It's a great way to become part of the creative process and connect with a community of curious minds. And, if you're not quite ready for that level of commitment, you can still support my work by treating me to a little coffee at buymeacoffee.com/BetsyBegonia. Every bit of support, big or small, helps me continue bringing you content like this and even more exciting projects on the horizon. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next installment in this series. I hope you have a wonderful day. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous weapon is the one you never see coming. Thank you to all of the members of my Patreon community. Let's name them and fame them. Carolyn Green, Frederick Bowman, Kelly Westover, Mario, Scott Carter, Adam Banzoff, Anne Margaret Moen, Chloe T, Krabby Cat, Erica Matsumoto, Hannah, Haley O'Donnell, Holly Faulkner, Michelle Sadlowski, Robin L. Jennings, Samantha, Sung Cho, Ola Umlaut, Wendy Foreman, Cece, Christina Wong, Elizabeth Mary, Elizabeth Velasquez, Francois V, a deleted scene in Everything Everywhere All at Once, Kayla Vavra, Kelly Ash, Lexi Haynes, Lydia, Nicholas Curtis, Olga Plantalenia, and Steve A. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you in the next one, and over there on Patreon.